Hello and welcome to another episode of the Self-Made Podcast. In this episode, I bring back Alex Searle. It was one of the most popular episodes we did, talking about diet pitfalls and how it's as more mindset than it is the physical of what you do. I bring him back now to talk about his other passion, that is business. Alex has built an incredibly successful fitness business, and we wanted to share and go through some of mine and his experiences of what is the things that really works and really doesn't work in business. And we talk about a lot of stuff, and a lot of it again comes down to that mindset, comes down to the work ethic, and how you do one thing is how you do everything. We discussed in this episode about playing the long game, like how to really analyze your work and how to build steps for the future. This is a really good episode for anyone that's running their own business, thinking of running their own business, or just wants to know a little bit of behind the scenes, pulling back the curtain of what it's like to be a business owner. Alex is always a pleasure to chat to, and I'm looking to get him on many, many times over the upcoming months. So I'm going to leave you with myself and Alex Searle. So round two, we've been saying about doing this for a while, and I'm looking forward. I'm really looking forward to this one because, it's amazing. I did a post there about amazing how things come around, and I think this is another moment where on the last episode, we talked about diet pitfalls. You were really flattering to me about how much I've mentored you in terms of getting clients results, and you've basically, in a lot of ways, have been a very unofficial mentor to me in the last 5-6 months. Anytime my content isn't up to scratch, you will call me on it, give me suggestions, and it's definitely helped me. So I'm intrigued to hear your take on the thoughts of business, as you've done very, very well. So just as an overview, tell us a little bit about your business, where it started, where it is now, and how that's gone.
Okay, how do I start? All right, let's obviously kick off from give you an overview of the business first of all. So obviously those of you that don't know me, name's Alex Searle, of course, as you can see on the title, and I'm the founder of Alex Searle Fitness, obviously an online transformation service. And I started in November 2019 was when I very first started. And that was literally to take on a couple of people that I knew. That was outside of my one-to-one stuff, just that obviously has as a little... it wasn't even the intention of a side hustle. It was actually so that I could train those people because they couldn't access the gym that I was in. So that's actually where it started. It was very, very basic. It was purely just training and a little bit of nutrition education and a little bit of nutrition knowledge. Since then, obviously coming around to October 21, we've obviously had a little bit more time in the game. We've had a lot going on with regards to the pandemic. And my dog has literally just started scratching the door. Sorry if you can hear that.
No, I
can't. Good timing. And yeah, obviously we've just been building up the service, and now very fortunately we've got clients all over the world achieving body transformations. So that's sort of an overview of what I actually do. And now there's a lot more ins and outs of the actual service, of the actual program, of course, as it's developed through the years. You're going to have to go back to the first question and remind me of where I'm actually at and what you'd like me to answer.
So it was basically that. It was looking at sort of an overview of how the business has grown, what were the key takeaway moments. And I suppose to go into a little bit more into a specific question, I think this is something that I think it'd be quite an interesting take on in a way a pitfall, but maybe not one that either of us would think about in our top lists. Going from that transition of working for a company that handed you clients and you didn't really have to think about anything other than being in the business. How did you find that transition then having to be a person who has to work on the business? And how do you find that balance now between in the business and on the business?
It's constantly challenging. It very much has sort of peaks and flows for sure. Obviously, as you say, going from somewhere that you are purposely just focusing on the training because you have no other concern, the clients are literally being passed over to you, to now running a business of which now fortunately has a team, it's that's I've sort of skipped ahead a little bit there, to be honest. That is a big requirement of what you need. And I came to realize that because you're no longer just training anymore. You're no longer just designing training plans, checking in with people and designing nutrition plans and then some educational content if that's what you're doing. Like you are operating a business. You're no longer just a personal trainer or a coach. So there is multiple facets of that, of which you need to be focusing on if you want to be successful, i.e. social media, admin work, staying on top of taxes, managing your own training, being the front of business, obviously making sure that you're keeping yourself in shape. Plus a lot of a constant development in education as well is huge. I'm sure we'll pull that back up later on, or I'd like to definitely bring that back up later on. There are, rather than, as I say, having your finger in one pie of just the training side of things, you now have to juggle multiple things in terms of focusing on the growth of the business and the management of the business, the money coming in, the money going out. And it does get tricky. It definitely does get tricky. And trying to manage that into your week, you really have got to plan and schedule a lot different to how you would have previously. So previously you would have just had your clients in every like whatever hour they were in for, and that would be their time. And then outside of that time, you're just doing you, whether that be training, eating, sleeping, going off playing or whatever. A little bit of obviously programming here and there, as I said. When you are now switching that to a total business shift, because now you're running your own company, I personally allocate days to certain tasks. So for example, my Monday and Tuesday, very primarily, so from 12 p.m. onwards until about 7 or 8, that is client relation work. So like in the business work, I'm serving clients, I'm doing my check-ins, and I'm responding to people. That's what I'm doing on those days. Okay. Wednesdays generally is content creation day plus education as well. So I'll spend a good amount of time actually reading a certain book that I'm going at. And then going on from that, Thursday again could be further content creation or business development. So any new ideas that I've had, whether that be when I'm in the shower or when I'm on a walk or something like that, I'll come up with something and be like, oh, that could be quite good. Or obviously on the back of some feedback that I've got in the service. So Thursday and Friday is when I'll generally be working on those things. Plus then on Friday, setting yourself up, okay, for everything with regards to the following week. So that's programs going out for new clients, making sure that that box is ticked. And then looking at other aspects like your content for the next week. How's that looking? How's your marketing looking for the next week? And then programming like my training for the next week. So there is a lot of things to try and think about. And there's a lot of other things to juggle for sure. But I think a big help initially is just staying organized and making sure you know actually what boxes need to be ticked. Because if you don't, then things can be a little bit chaotic and seem very, very stressful. You'll often go through times of high procrastination, which I'm the worst. Honestly, I'm the worst. I say this now, I am the worst. Even though I always talk about it in content and whatnot, normally people that talk about stuff in their content is because they've suffered with it the most.
Yep.
So, yeah, in terms of obviously how I'm structuring it in with the week and how I sort of like go day to day, that is definitely a big part of it. And then obviously down the line, looking at taking on actually people to help you, because you can only do so much. Obviously, you started off as a trainer and you can do that up to a certain point with obviously serving the clients at a very, very high level. But then if you're still the business owner and you're still operating the business single-handedly, you've got a very, very low cap before things start getting a little bit sloppy. Either content doesn't go out or client service goes down because you're too busy putting content out or other aspects.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. I like the way you structure your days in terms of having like dedicated days for stuff. And I think it's, like that's one of the things that I somewhat still struggle with, because I am still, on the gym floor, to a degree, as well as, it's half my time. And you think of it like online is almost a complementary thing to one-to-one, but it really is a different business. And like certainly stuff like you mentioned, the business development stuff, it's very difficult to do that in small pockets of time. Like you almost need to, because you will procrastinate, you will get overwhelmed with stuff, you will need to work out how to do things that you never had to do as a trainer. And I think that's quite an interesting way of like saying, like, I'm going to give myself that time. If I get it done in 1 hour, I'll do something else. But if it takes 2 hours, then it needs to.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said there, it can get overwhelming at times. And I completely understand it. Obviously, having walked in that path, and I'm not past it by any stretch. I don't think you ever do. You just have new problems. Like that's all that happens. It's just don't ever think to yourself, oh, this will be so much better once I've understood this and then it'll be fine. No, new problems will arise. I can just set that expectation nice and early for you, just so that you can get better at dealing with problems and not so emotionally attached to it as well, thinking that the business is failing. So it's, as I say, things come up and it can be overwhelming, and it's just navigating around that. It's taking some breath and realizing that, okay, it's time for a bit of business development to happen so that I can now handle with this issue or handle this workload, or there's always something around it. As I say, so each time, I remember when I started building up from where I very first started. So when I went from literally 0 to 10 clients, I was like, holy shit, I can't handle this. This is way too much. I'm way too inefficient. There needs to be some changes going on. And like, okay, those things then went in place. A couple of automations, things like that. And then it was like, okay, cool. 10 is now absolutely fine. No problem. I can do that nice and quickly. Then you go from 10 to 20 and it's like, oh shit, I can't deal with this. This is way too much. What am I going to do here? You make the changes again. Business shows some cracks. You fix those cracks. And then again, 20 to 30, 30 to 40. It never stops. That doesn't stop. So, and there's constant that re-evaluation. I'm always looking at it in the business, and it's always when actually it gets to a point of overwhelm, because otherwise people do stay comfortable and things don't need to change until cracks start showing. And then you start getting overwhelmed, and then you actually start logically thinking, how can I navigate around this? What is the issue that I've got here? Have I got too many clients? Are check-ins taking too long? Have I not saved enough time to then put out some more educational content for people that aren't clients yet, or potential prospects and leads and so on? And all of those things are so important. So you only get to that though by hitting the ceiling, in my opinion.
I think as well. I think because a lot of people, I think it's human nature that some people are really good, like anonymous surveys and things like this, and we all maybe should do these things more. But I think like the majority of people out there probably assume things are fine until they hit a problem, whether it's on their side or on a client side. And it's like, I need to then go and sort this. And I think if you're never pushing those boundaries, you never find the cracks in your business, and you probably never get through that first hurdle.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something that just popped to mind just then, and it's literally gone in one ear and outside the other into my head. And I'm going to have to bring that one back up, because that came to mind as you were saying that, and then I've just lost it again.
But if it comes up, we'll grab it again. One thing I was going to talk about, you mentioned earlier about getting inspiration when you're on a walk or in the shower or things like this. And this is something I talk a lot about in my content, in terms of a lot of clients coming into the business wanting to get in shape. They talk about, I need to be motivated to lose fat. I need to be motivated to go to the gym. Where realistically, it's discipline that gets you anywhere, right? Motivation, it comes in those fleeting moments. Like 9 times out of 10, I'll get motivated by watching a video just before bed. I'm like, I cannot stay up till 2:00 in the morning doing this. And unfortunately, with a bit of ADHD, more often than not, I do, and I regret it. So you see two camps of, it's working smarter, not harder, the Tim Ferriss camp. And then you get the idea is there is total hustle. And do you think it's a bit of a mistake that people don't spend enough time taking a step back so that you can come up with these ideas and breakthroughs? Or where's your stance on that spectrum of smart?
I definitely agree with that. I think it's really difficult, actually. And I think a lot of trainers will actually agree with me on this. I think it's really difficult to understand when to do that. I only know a very small handful of people that actually strategically plan in breaks for that exact reason. Whereas for the likes of myself, and this is something that I'm actually working on, is I will just go, and I will continue to go until I get to a point of where I need a break. And then only at that point will I go on holiday, or I'll take some time off and do something, or just even a little weekend away. And then it reminds me actually how much that is important, because as you say, it does hit that reset button, and you do then, your mind then goes into flow, and then you can go into that creative state because you're not stressed. It's not problem solving constantly. It's naturally enabling to relax and just wander a bit. And then that's when the new ideas come. And then that's when quite often that they come through, obviously, as we mentioned a second ago, either like in the shower or on a walk. Obviously, we're talking like short-term things there. Or alternatively, people will be on holiday laying on a beach and they'll be like, oh, that's a good idea. And it will just literally just come to them because they're not thinking about anything. They're just totally relaxing. I think it is really important to program that stuff into your diary at some point, depending on what it is. A lot of people obviously see it as like a huge expense because they see the only thing that they can do is go on a holiday, and that's not true. You can have a little weekend somewhere local or go out for the day, and just having that downtime keeps you in a really good headspace and keeps you very, very positive and keeps you well rested. And then that allows you to perform at a high level. Whereas if you are totally on the grind constantly, and some people can be like, naturally they can be like that. For example, the likes of like The Rock. I'm going to a very extreme example there, but the likes of The Rock never switches off. Literally survives on about 4 or 5 hours sleep, and then he's off again and he's going. He can just function on that. I remember watching an interview on Elon Musk, and he said that he can operate pretty well on about 5.5 hours. And I can't. My gosh, I can't. So some people obviously are very, very different, but it's understanding what you can operate on and then actually serving that. Because if you run yourself into the ground and then you hit burnout, or you just hit a point where you're just very, very sluggish, no new ideas are coming, you don't feel good, you don't feel energized, that's not a good place to sit. And that can come from hustling hard and thinking, oh, but I'm pushing the business. No, you're not. You're actually being really unproductive right now because you just need to go to bed. You just need to go and watch a film, go to bed and get a good night's sleep, because then the next day you will then have a new, and I'm saying this because I fully understand this. Like whenever I have a couple of late nights in a row, for example, I will just procrastinate like anything. It will be the worst. Content ideas will be slow. When I'm trying to do write-ups for new education in the members area, or alternatively, obviously for content again, it will be slow, and it's very, very frustrating. Whereas actually, if you take those couple more hours of downtime, like I know Kieran, obviously from Total Performance, and he quite often says downtime is uptime. So if you can program that in, whether, as I say, whether that be getting good sleep, whether that be actually taking weekends off, whether that be taking regular holidays, that is a very, very productive thing to do in terms of business development.
You really resonated with me there when you were talking about sort of like the procrastination often comes with not looking after yourself and not getting yourself in a good space. Like I know for me, like sometimes the sign I need to take a step back is often when I don't want to. It's not when I've hit not when I've fully hit a burnout, like, oh man, I'm exhausted, I need a break. It's more often than not when I'm sitting there with a task to do and I cannot think about what to do, and I'm getting more and more frustrated and wanting to, always on thinking, I need to do more of this, I'm behind on this, I should have done this. And that's the time where I actually need to go take half a step back to take 2 forward. Because if I continue feeling guilty about not doing something, I'll never come into it with an actual ability to actually get shit done. I'm just like hammering the problem even worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I actually, something that really resonated with me from a trainer that obviously that from a mentor, that we've mutually had, was that going sprints actually works really well. Work in sprints. That's how I'm sure this is actually really individual, but that's how I actually really prefer to work as well. So for example, I will know that for 2 or on the back end of a holiday, when I'm back, it's go time. Like I am absolutely hammering it. I'm re-energized. I'm ready to go, and I will push hard. So then but then obviously at the end of that, I will then plan in another holiday or another short break, or knowing that I'm going to have that downtime. We've absolutely smashed it through this month. We're going to take 2 weeks of not actively selling, not actively trying to take on new people, and just serving obviously the current clients that we've got, which we were always doing anyway, but just to a higher level. And actually, as I say, just serving yourself a little bit more, ready for that next push again. That really works for me, because I think you can concentrate so much higher and so much better when you're doing it like that, rather than sort of going at, say, I don't know, 80% about like constantly. For me, that can be very unproductive. That can get quite tedious, and just things start slowing down if I start doing that. Whereas if you go in that short spurts of like Okay, we're hammering it. Okay, we're completely taking the foot off the gas, and then we're hammering it again. That works really well, I think, in terms of obviously energy management, trying to run the business and so on. But as we know, there's multiple things that can come under this umbrella, and I'm sure obviously that we're going to get into. But I think from like any trainers that are listening, obviously that are building up at the moment and don't feel like they're doing too well, or they feel like they've hit a bit of a ceiling of where they're at or something like that. That is so normal, like unbelievably normal. And I get it all the time. And I'm still always having to remind myself that this is a very, very normal part of business. And to just try and find peace in other aspects of, okay, are my clients getting good results? Yes. Are you getting good feedback from your service? Yes. Like a lot of the metrics that they just follow is either financial or getting new clients on board, which, yes, are very important in terms of business. Of course, I'm not denying that. But at the same time, don't drive yourself mad if things have slowed down a little bit, whether that be due to the time of year that it is, whether that be just in general. As I said, business is going to have peaks and flows. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've definitely hit the nail on the head there. And I think the big thing, and I want to sort of go into this a little bit more in a second, but I've got a question about what you just said beforehand. But like, where was I going with this? I'm losing my trail of thought now. It's contagious.
But you know what? While you're thinking of what you just said there, I actually had mine pop up. Okay. So when we were speaking earlier about how sort of like the business has developed and whatnot, I remember looking back now of what the business used to be, and it is genuinely laughable. Like genuinely laughable. So just know that things are going to get better just through continuous small development, and don't be overwhelmed at looking at people that are ahead of you. Or like, I personally like looking at people ahead of me because I look at it from a bird's eye view and see like, okay, what are they doing? What's their socials looking like? What are all their links and lead magnets looking like? Like, what's the inside of their business look like? Have I worked with this person? Do I know people that have worked with these people? Like, and trying to look at it almost like quite critically, and then take obviously your own spin on that. What could I take from this that would actually serve my audience really well, or my service really well, if it's a pretty similar offer? And as I say, looking back at where I was previously to where I am now, like I'm very, very proud of where we are now. Like, we serve some very high profile individuals. The service is far more built out with a lot more automation, with a lot more positive features with regards to what the clients get now in terms of the videos in the members area, the documents that they get, the support, the resources that they get, the results that we now produce. That has come through time, and that has come through small tweaks along, like throughout the journey. Some people will have, including myself, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, I do this, and that's why I can speak confidently about it, is that I will create a to-do list as long as my arm. And I'm very much like a visionary. Like I will keep having new ideas before I've implemented the old ones. And it's very frustrating because you don't get anything done. And then when you've got a to-do list built up that long of like new ideas and whatnot, it gets very, very overwhelming. And then you don't do anything. If you're a procrastinator, which a lot of entrepreneurs are, a lot of business owners are, you'll get stuck at that point. And I think something that we took away from the book, The One Thing, is to really focus on that. Like, that really resonated with me and really, really helped, because just say, I'm just going to implement that this week, that one task, which will probably only take you about half an hour, tops a day. And then once it's in place, okay, cool. You've either ticked that box for that week, kick back, enjoy your week, or you can then move on to the next thing. But through that constant redevelopment and thinking, okay, what do my clients need? What problems have they got? So like, that could be not even before they're in the service. That could be while they're in the service. Like, so are they getting excellent training? Are they getting excellent nutrition? Okay. Are they still struggling though? Why is that? What are they particularly struggling with? Like, do they need more framework? So for example, a recent one that I've had is that, like, we provide full detailed meal plans within the service, obviously for our guys, so they've got clarity on what to have. Okay, cool. They don't know how to do a meal prep. So then I started putting some videos in of me doing a meal prep. And then that has only come through, as I say, looking at the service as it is at the moment, everything that they get. Don't think that that's complete, because obviously that's how your service will build. And that's also how it will add more value. And then that's also how you'll get higher amount of referrals, because the more problems that you can solve for people, of course, the better it is. Like what clients and what people are looking for is the easiest, most straightforward, done for you way of achieving a result in the shortest time frame as well, generally. So if you can actually think about all the intricacies of what somebody would need for that within your service, whatever that be, put some training around that. Bring that as a component as your service, because it's just going to add more value. And then the actual, as you're building up in terms of business development, creating more success, depending on obviously how you look at success, if that's financial, if that's client results, if it's a mixture of it all, then it's only going to better that and push you forward. And then marketing becomes far easier. And business development then snowballs and grows because the service is purely just getting better and better and better.
The big thing that I took away, which is it ties back into the point I was trying to think of earlier on quite nicely, is that everything it goes back, which I think is quite, inspiring. I think anyone listening to this should take away the subtext here that Alex is putting across, is that everything is about serving the client. You mentioned earlier on about if you get overwhelmed in one area of business, look back and say, are your clients getting results? And it's coming back to go, what is the actual important thing right now? Before I think about Canva graphics, active campaign, all these automations, it's like, right, if all that stuff I'm procrastinating on all that stuff, am I doing what the business is set out to do? Because you can only sell shit once. And I remember John Goodman from the PTDC, which I really have a lot of time for. His book Ignite the Fire, and it's always stuck with me. It's like, if you want, like, the easiest thing of marketing is just do a great job and make sure everybody knows about it. Yeah. And I think if you're always improving your service, as you said, and just saying, look, these are the results they're getting, this is what I offer them.
Yep.
The marketing sort of takes into itself, really, and you'll never ever get to the point where you become a marketing machine. Like the downside of some influencers in the fitness industry, where it's all in front of the camera, it's machine gun, it's not to necessarily call out like Joe Wicks, but it's 1 to a million. And I'll post 100 that get a result. And I don't think, by the sound of what you're saying, your business won't go down that way, because it's always about what can I give back.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that, because literally a video that I was watching today, and it was a bit of a quote from Joe Rogan actually, is that general principle is to become so good at what you do that it does not get ignored. It can't get ignored. For example, oh my gosh, that is criminal that I've forgotten his name. Michael Jordan. Wow. All right. For example, obviously let's turn it to sports. It's very, very easy. Michael Jordan or any sportsman, okay, becomes so good at what you do that you are literally the only option. Like they don't go out for work. They get approached by teams. They get approached by these people because they are the best of the best. Okay. So if you're, whether that be that you're starting out, or whether that be, no matter how down the line you are, constant education and constant refinement on you as a coach and what you deliver and what you offer is only going to serve you down the line. So as I say, if you are, of course, a body transformation specialist, if you are a strength coach, if you are a weight loss coach for women, whatever that be, become the best person that you can be in that space. Now, and don't be looking at that and looking at people that are ahead of you, because they've probably had more years in the game. So that's comparing apples and oranges. So that's literally not your responsibility to actually get comparison syndrome and think, oh, I don't know anything here. Like nobody knew anything when they first started, but they started. So that's exactly what you need to do. And we're all on a road. We're all climbing a ladder. So whether that be you're in the middle of it, whether that be you're at the top of it, whether that be you're at the bottom of it, you've all got the same steps to take. So you just need to make sure that you're continuously educating yourself, because through that, as you say, when people are focusing on sort of like business development and thinking, right, how can I grow my online training company? They're thinking, okay, lead generation. They're thinking content. They're thinking fancy Canva images. They're thinking automations and whatnot. And they take the focus off of the bread and butter of what you're actually doing, which is achieving results for clients. And I can resonate with it, because I sometimes do it. If we're having a slow couple of months or something like that, because it happens, you then start actually thinking quite heavily about business development and what can you do? What offers can you bring in? What more can you do on your socials? What lead generation tactics can you use? Whereas actually, if you continued with a very, very high potential focus on your clients getting an absolutely outstanding result and pulling up your success rate with your clients, They will do the speaking for you, for one. And secondly, when you post an amazing transformation, you're not going to need to market that hard.
Mm. The interesting thing I think you said about comparison and like people comparing themselves to others, I think it's an important thing not to sort of look at where other people are, because not only is the fact that it doesn't affect what you do and what your aspect is, but if you're doing a good job, if you're going out there and actively upskilling yourself, well, I certainly can speak from my experience of like, I've been very, lucky to have the network that I have, and it's certainly helped the podcast, getting people like Luke Lehman and Stefan Gazolt and Jordan Shallow and all these guys on the show. But it's because as I get better, my network gets better. So in terms, the people I compare myself to get smarter. The gap never really shrinks. I just look to a higher standard. So if I'm going to be not acting based on the fact that these people are ahead of me, or what is Jordan Shallow doing, then I'll never make a move ever.
Yeah, for sure. You'll always have that as well. Like, for example, even you listing off those names, incredible names in the industry that have been on your podcast. And here I am also talking on your podcast, gives me massive imposter syndrome.
You're still top 5, I think. You're still in the top 5.
I'm very proud of that.
You're still, you're still beating some of them.
We'll see if this one does any better. But I don't understand why or how. I have no idea. But this is what I mean. This is what I mean. When you're in that position and you feel that way, trust me, I get it. Like, I really, really do get it. And I think constantly just pushing yourself and doing it anyway, like feeling that fear and doing it anyway. There's multiple books about that, I'm sure. I know there is for a fact. Is generally the way that you're going to grow. Like, all of those people, if, for example, if you are looking up to those people and you want to be those type of guys that are speaking on stages in front of other trainers, or you want to be speaking in front of stages of your target audience and so on, they had their first speech one day and they would have been absolutely terrified. I can tell you for a fact. I remember our first podcast, I was nervous, shaking like a leaf. And there's been multiple instances where that's happened. Even when I was presenting at our previous workplace, I've got our first ever client live workshop going on this weekend coming.
Awesome.
Am I nervous? Yep. Mm-hmm. Am I looking forward to it though? Yep, because it's only going to push things forwards. So normally the things that you procrastinate on, and actually the things that you potentially look at the people that are ahead of you, whether that be in the online training space or whatever, and you look at what they're doing. Are they doing lives? Are they going on TV, doing presentations on TV? Like, are they doing like free challenges, 5-day challenges for people all over their socials and whatnot, like people that they've never spoken to before? If that makes you if that gives you nerves, they're probably the things to do. Like, and just bite the bullet and just do it. Because the first one, once you get that first one out of the way, you will then actually realize that you will hit whether you want to call it, I don't know, the success rate or however you want to look at it like that, of these people. So if we're obviously talking about comparison, like obviously we know lots of people in the space that are ahead, that are doing very, very well, but you can't compare yourself to, or I certainly can't personally, because like I've got friends that are doing incredibly well. But again, I stay in my own lane and I find comfort in that because, for example, they've got a team of 4 coaches. I've not got that. So don't compare yourself to it. Okay. What else are they doing? Are they doing lives on Instagram? Are you doing that? No. Okay. Don't compare yourself to it then. So that's what, and then I personally find good comfort in that. And then it just keeps me going. And that is how I actually look critically at the people ahead of me. Like, some people don't like to follow people that are, I say slightly ahead. Maybe that's the best, for lack of better explanation, ahead of you. Bigger business, more people in the company, further along, more years, more skin in the game, and so on. Look at them and see what they've done. Like, do they have a live Facebook group? Are they doing events? Are they doing paid ads? Do they have a team? Do they have coaches? Do they have social media manager? Like, what have they got in their service? And don't compare yourself thinking, oh, I've not got that. What you can build up to that. You can work up to that. Look at the different components of what they've got and think, okay, what can I introduce now? What's like my next step that could actually push me a little bit closer to that, if that's where you want to go? Like, my next move is building out the team. And very, very annoyingly, and I know our previous mentor will laugh at this if he's listening, but this is something that he told me before I moved on to do a while ago. And I was like, no, okay, right. I think I want to keep it to myself and whatnot. And now it's funny that has come back around and bit me in the arse. And now I'm actually looking to build out more of a team. So that's obviously like my next moves. But that's how I see, if I'm looking at companies that are ahead of myself, it's like, what have they got? Okay, this is a team of 4 coaches. I'm currently just operating on my own. So if I can then take on some coaches, then obviously we can bring our client numbers up, improve our success rate. I can then train those coaches to be better coaches, and then the company is going to grow. But it's taking those steps.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is everyone starts somewhere. Like I saw a post that really encapsulated everything you just said there, was from John Berardi, who is probably one of my biggest influences. If I can build a precision nutrition eventually, then wow. But he showed a picture of the first speaking gig. Like, people just know John. If anyone's in the fitness industry now who knows who John Berardi is, like, he's one of the biggest names there is. And he talks about his first speaking gig, and he flew out to this place across America and turned up, and not one person showed up. Not one. And I remember those things, like, if that's happened to John Berardi, I don't mind if I put a question box up on Instagram and I don't get a question.
Oh my God, I've had multiple starting out. Still happens sometimes now. It just purely depends on how it lands. And that's what I mean. That's fine. Okay, cool. Just do the next one. Or like have people to help you and whatnot. Like you don't need me to sit here to tell you that there's been multiple stories from all different entrepreneurs in the world across the space and whatever that have had multiple failed businesses, or how slow business was to start off. Like, generally, from the generation that I know have come up in the online training space, have actually progressed incredibly quickly compared to other companies that don't actually make a profit in the first 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's another thing to sort of like remember. Like, I'm right, don't get me wrong, I'm a big one for sort of like regaining some reality of actually looking at how far like you've come and all of that, and look at like where you're at. But I'm also one, okay, assess that, but now look at, right, what can you do that's better? I'm not one for just relying on, but look at how far you've come. Because I've had that personally. I've had that from like previous people that I've spoken to. If I'm like in a little bit of a rut or in a little bit of a slow patch, and they're like, look how far you've come. Like, okay, what are some other components? And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Yep. Really happy with that. Totally understand what you're saying. What do I do to get to the next level? Like, let's talk progressively. Like, what do I need to do to actually move forwards? Yeah. But I think a lot of people in our space and in obviously the online training world, starting out especially, and even that have had actually some skin in the game for a period of time, that are maybe progressing in their eyes a little bit slower than others, are a bit scared to take the steps of what you've got to do in some instances. For example, like content, something like a little saying that has really stuck to me is content is currency, or content is king. Either one of those. Like, you need to constantly be putting out content, good quality content, speaking to your audience. And that is so, so true. Like, look at all the people that you look up to in terms of like the education space, or like people that you learn from. They're always putting out content because you're watching it and you are potentially their next client. So looking at it from a bird's eye view, you need to be doing the same thing, because you're sitting here when you're eating your lunch, watching these educational videos from these people that you look up to, but you're not doing the same thing for people that are potentially looking up to you. And I think it's putting yourself out there like that. Like, it really is. You just need to be known, and you just need to get as many eyes on you as possible. And sometimes that could be uncomfortable, because sometimes that might be doing your first Instagram live, which I am still have a hold up on, but I am actually doing this week, and I've now said it. So now I'm actually going to have to do it. Or for example, yourself in a podcast, like I completely admire that, because your reach is going to be high. You're going to be reaching people that have not heard of you before, and hopefully they're going to get an understanding of actually how good you are. And you're putting yourself out there in that respect. People might be hesitant on starting a podcast. People might be hesitant on putting more.
I was hesitant for years of starting this podcast, and it doesn't help that individuality wasn't a trait that was well known in our last company. But but like even when I finished, it was like, okay, how do I do this? How do I get started? I had 2 people give me rundowns. So Elliot Hassoun, who we used to work with, and a guy called Brett gave me this rundown. Eventually, I was like, when I actually started, like, I was looking at things like, oh, good, if no one listens to it, I don't get any business. Can I really afford the cost of Buzzsprout? Like, it's 20 quid a month. It's like, I can make 10 times that in one client. I'm like, just pay it, get over yourself. Yeah. And like, what am I at now? I'm at like 30, 40 episodes in. Yeah. You know, like often twice a week. Like it's not difficult once you get started. It's just overcoming that first hurdle.
Exactly. And that is, I know for a fact, that is exactly like everything else. For me, that's Instagram Lives at the moment. I don't know why I've had this hang up. It's absolutely ridiculous. I've been in the game for a while now. I will comfortably present in person. Why I don't do it on Instagram Lives, I don't know. I'm just being an idiot. But is what it is. And it's having that first step, because I know for a fact, like I jumped on one actually with a friend of ours, and absolutely fine. And we done one. Yeah, we done one. But I've not done my own yet, but we done one.
If you ever want me to return the favor, because I can.
Yeah, absolutely,
nervous,
of course.
Just let me know anytime.
We will definitely sort that out. But like as you say, having that first step towards something that you've not done before is always going to be scary. But just do it. Stop sitting there and talking about it. Just do it. And I'm going to eat my words and say this because I need to do it myself, and I am doing it this week. But it is happening for sure.
I'm going to go on there and put in the question box, what took you so long?
Yeah, do it. And I'll probably stutter and pause and sweat uncomfortably, potentially wet myself a little bit, and then hopefully find some way around it.
So like a lot of this is sort of like say being the best coach you can be. You've talked about upskilling yourself quite a lot. Where do you find that balance between upskilling yourself and learning? Because obviously there's a certain amount of time you've got to spend client work in the business, like actually doing stuff, because a lot of people will just gather information and do fuck all. But where do you find that balance between like in your time that you dedicate to studying, business study, coaching study? Because I suppose this is a big pitfall that I find that a lot of people make, is that either they've just started their PT and they go, right, I'm going to hit the online game, never do any gym floor hours, don't know how to get a result, but I'm going to start now, which potentially means like, no, you should probably learn how to be good at your job first. But on the flip side of that, we see people who've learned how to be good at their job that thinks that's going to coast them. And then you find the people in between who have got good, and then maybe a little bit more like me in some instances, forget all about it because they focus so on the business, they're not upskilling anymore. So where's that balance for you of being the good coach and the good businessman?
That's a really good question. That is a very, very good question that I think every single coach will probably be nodding their head at right now. And I've had that multiple times. So for myself, I wasn't that, don't worry, I'm not going to go into some deep story right now, but I wasn't that bright in school. So learning was actually quite a difficult thing for me. So I find now, cutting straight to obviously the point, if I try and, like, I know people that read multiple books at one time. I can't do that. I can't do it. I haven't got the capacity to actually take that on board. I need like one letter at a time for me. But finding that balance, I think I go between actually, depending on where things are at in terms of like the business and whatnot. But recently, similarly to yourself, I've gone very, very heavily down the business route because that was where we were lacking, because we came up as coaches first, like very well educated, knew a lot about how to achieve a transformation and so on. But as you say, when you start getting to the crux of building a business, that is very much where your focus can just go, despite the fact that coaching is actually a huge portion of that. So in terms of balancing it, as I say, I do go between one book at a time. Normally it'll be a business book, then it'll be onto a training book. Then it'll be a business book, then it'll be onto a training book. Alternatively, what I have seen good value in is actually having a coach that you really respect, for example, training you. So whether that be in your own training, like physical training, and then you learning off of them in that concept. So then the books that you're reading can be business related. Alternatively, if you then flip that, if you've got a business mentor, like what we both have mutually, of which you are learning a lot of content from there. So you're going to be on the live calls that I'm sure that they will do. You'll be taking on the tips on board that they're giving you in their private coaching calls and in their members area. So then the books that you can read can be training books because you're getting your education from the video format or on the calls that you're getting. Now, if there's certain areas that you feel like personally for myself, rather than actually putting a time frame on it, personally for myself, I find that what do I feel unconfident in at that time? That's what I personally do. So, for example, if business is going really well, I've just read a heap of business books, I've implemented a lot of things, and it's just flowing really nicely at the moment. But actually, I'm starting to lose confidence in my client delivery, and I'm losing confidence in my ability to achieve results or present or teach certain like training elements, or talk about nutrition, or talk about sleep or the nervous system and so on. Then I'll be like, okay, I've not studied my training aspects for a while. Let's make a bit of a switch for a while, go back onto there. And then like, I consume content in all different formats, whether that be podcasts, whether that be reading a book at a time, whether that be sitting down at breakfast, watching some videos, depending on, as I say, how I'm feeling in that time is what I would watch for sure. But I am always watching something. So when I'm eating, for example, I'll often be watching a video, or whether that be, again, depending on how I'm feeling, whether that be towards training, nutrition, sleep, any sort of like aspects that I'm lacking in at that time or feel unconfident in at that time. That's normally my trigger. Or alternatively, as I said, I might go for a walk and I'll listen to a podcast, and that could be an interview on somebody's business, or that would be obviously another example of that. But I think to sum up your question a little bit better, I feel like I've really rambled there. I don't have like, sorry?
But podcaster 4 is rambling.
Yeah.
This is long form content at its best.
Do you know what? When I listen to myself back, I'm like, oh my God, you speak like an absolute idiot. Anyway. So where was I? Yeah. To sort of sum up, I know it's a bit of a grey answer, I think, but I do just go off of how I'm feeling at that time. If I'm not feeling confident in the business, I'll read business books. And then all of a sudden, that'll give me lots of new ideas. You'll have lots of ideas that spark. You'll then want to implement things and so on. If I'm lacking confidence in my training ability, I will then watch videos and training and courses or books or podcasts about training. That's sort of like how I play it, to be honest.
I think that comes back as well to in the sense of like being comfortable being that little bit uncomfortable, and there's always going to be something. Because like I've always said that I think personal training is a very, very difficult job, because you've got, and I don't want to compare it to any of the jobs I'm going to mention, but you've got to be a jack of all trades, like master of none. Like a therapist can go and study the mindset stuff because that is their role. Yes, they've got to be more of an expert at it, but they can just tunnel vision themselves. A doctor can focus on the medical aspect side of these things, whereas we've got to kind of be good at mindset, good at nutrition, good at training, good at, just a bit good at everything else. And I think you're never, ever, ever going to feel like you've got it covered. You're never going to feel like you're the top of the game at this. And it's understanding that I'm always going to have bits that I'm working on improving. One thing I watched recently is a lot of videos about like actually how to study from like a lot of medical students, right? How to get the best out of your studying. And a lot of them were just saying that like there's one is active recall. So quizzing yourself on stuff is going to be one reason why people that study and taking information 7 days a week. And they did a study where someone did 1 time a week studying, but then did quizzes the rest of the week. The second person got better results. And then the other thing they talked about was actually bouncing between topics. So or slightly different skill sets. So like they had someone to get into a 4-foot throwing something into a basket. Someone practiced the 4-foot every day. The other person practiced 3s and 5s, but never 4s. The brain had to work harder because they were bouncing between topics, which means they retained more of the skill set. And I thought that was interesting when it comes to like this. It's like, okay, you say you dedicate days to, training programming for clients, building business development. You could almost dedicate your study to those days as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. That's a great shout. And I actually used to do that. So in the summer, this little story, in the summer, every Wednesday, it used to be, tended to be nice, of course, when we actually had a nice summer. But every Wednesday, I would go down to the park with my business book, and read that book. And then every Friday, I would go down to the park because obviously those are like my less client active days. Yeah. I would go down to my park and read a training book for a while. I used to do that for a long period of time. But something that actually just came up just then, I was actually speaking to a trainer about this not that long ago. And if you are lacking confidence, or any trainers that are lacking confidence in their service, in their ability of training, I guarantee are not studying, are not reading anything. And then they're expecting to then be confident in their delivery. That's a huge, huge part that I took away from obviously our previous workplace, because I noticed the clear difference between previously not studying and just being in the crux of the business, going day to day, doing the steps, training people, delivering whatever it was that I had, which was not a lot, to actually being forced to actively study every single week. And my confidence as a trainer went through the roof. As a result of that, your results go through the roof. As a result of that, your business then develops and you reach a higher level. Like that is something that I can't stress enough to people that I know for a fact a few trainers off the top of mind aren't doing, which we've spoken about, we laugh and joke about, because we always come back to it and they say, oh, what about this? What about that? And they're like, I don't feel confident, or I don't know what I'm doing, or they'll lack ideas, they'll lack new ideas, and they'll feel like they're spinning their wheels. Generally comes from not actively studying at that time, in my opinion. Whenever I'm reading a book, I always have either new ideas, or I always have like my most confident feeling as a coach to be like, no, you've got this dialed in, like, you know exactly what you're doing, and so on. Whereas when I'm not doing that, and don't get me wrong, I still get these feelings of sometimes, do I even know what I'm talking about? Like, I'm sure every coach will get that, but like, I notice it more when I'm not actively studying. And mine is just through ease of use, is generally like through books, or like videos and so on. But yeah, so getting on top of that will then, and actually scheduling that into your day as a big part of it, like in terms of obviously education, will give you huge confidence as a coach and will push your business forwards.
Yeah, and I think as well as that, it's that confidence that if you don't know something, you're going to find it out because you've got that time booked aside. And I know from my experience of what I've done, it's like, and it's probably part of the reason what's fueled me to be relatively, without sounding like a prick, educated in the field in terms of mentoring like trainers now and things like this, because it was like, if I knew I was going to get up there and speak to people that are also educated in this craft, I needed to be. And to be confident up there, or to be confident with clients, that I needed to learn this. And I think going back to your early point about ways of education, talking about getting coaching, I think that's a big pitfall that a lot of people will sort of fall into, because I know when I'm getting coaching and I've got my training and nutrition in order, I tend to be more confident delivering it to others, because I feel like it's not empty promises. And I know a lot of people where their nutrition has suffered because they're so focused on the business. They're not really taking their training and nutrition seriously. So they almost feel like they shouldn't have any right to talk to their clients like this because they're not doing it. And it's like, 100%. The more you can be, I'm living this, it's much, much easier to have those difficult conversations if necessary.
Yeah, definitely. And I think obviously one of the biggest learning process, and I think I might have said this in the previous podcast, I can't remember now, is the biggest learning curve for myself was actually putting myself through the process and practicing what you're preaching, like religiously, because it's all well and good, obviously, saying what you've read out of a book or what you think is right. But until you're actually in that process and you've experienced what it is that your client is going through, or what it is that they actually are feeling, then you're not going to have an in-depth understanding of it, because it's hormonal, it's emotional feelings. It's not just like logistics and what you're reading in books all the time. It's you get a much better understanding of actually how to overcome those roadblocks if you have had to go around them physically yourself.
Yeah, and it's without going off on a tangent that's away from the business side of it. I think it's important then when you look at certain things, like good coaches by the strategies they use. We all know they have to be in a caloric deficit, but like if you say, oh, okay, when they plateau it this way, I take X amount of calories, and like, well, you might not see things like tracking errors. You might not notice things like this because you don't know to look for it, or like having a day where it's like, yeah, it's a really low calorie day. And that sounds horrible, but the fact that it allows me to have 6 averagely deficit days would only be something that you think of if you've been in a position where I would rather do 1 really tough day than 7 averagely tough days. So it's like, those are the strategies where it's like, how do we make this actually practical? If you're going through that process, I learn something from every coach. I learn more from getting a coach, and I've got a coach right now, than I ever learned from a book. And I learn a lot about business as well, because
Absolutely.
I see things that they are doing, how their systems run, and what can I take. And sometimes going back to the whole, how far you've come sort of thing, sometimes going, do you know what? I do some of this stuff better.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I was actually just about to say that on the back of obviously what you said there. I think I've definitely had that in both cases. And we'll keep this business related. So I'll remember what I'm coming on to. But through having coaching myself for sure it's for two aspects. First of all, to hold myself to a higher level of accountability and also to learn their processes if it's a coach that I understand, if it's a coach that I respect, sorry. Also, is to actually have an inside view of their business model, and you as a client from the moment you message that coach to the moment you exit that business, you understand the process of what you get. Okay, and then with that, you are obviously seeing what value they provide. You can understand what you didn't like about that service. So, okay, are you doing what they're doing? And if you don't like that about what they're doing, probably should fix that in yours. Or alternatively, if they've got things that you think, yeah, that's absolutely awesome, I'm going to implement that. Great. Obviously, you can then do that. But like another thing with that, and obviously, again, this is where I was going to bring it right down to business, is obviously where a lot of online coaches get really, really hung up on price. Where should they be at? What product should they have? What offer should it be? Should it be 3 months up front? Should it be 6 months up front? Should it be monthly rolling? And I go back and forth on this quite regularly. But I think through having other experiences with working with other coaches as well, I've been on courses that I've paid thousands for, and my service is 10x what theirs is. And that's not me blowing my own trumpet. That's just, it puts into perspective, actually, how much you could potentially be undercharging for what you're doing. Now, I'm a big advocate of charging what you're worth. So deliver a lot and provide a lot of value and keep pushing that. So as long as, like, for example, if I was to say to you, right, you can have this Freddo for £1,000, you're going to be like, well, no, because that's not a very good value exchange. I can get a Freddo for 20p or about 50p now, because they tend to go up every year, don't they? But
I remember me in 5p, mate. That's
yes, exactly. But like, and where I'm heading with that is that then if I say, okay, do you want to buy this Lamborghini off me? It'll be £1,000. You'll be like, yes, obviously, because you're getting huge amounts of value, or what is obviously worth a hell of a lot more. Yet you're still paying obviously a decent amount of money, but the value is higher. So if you can continue to do that, if you're looking at this from a business perspective and thinking, okay, I want to be able to push my prices up. Sometimes I've actually been instructed by mentors to put my price up before I felt ready to. But do you know what that done? If I was to say to you now, say just for numbers' sake, okay, say for example, if your program was $2,000, say if we're going to go like program based, 6 months, whatever, your program is $2,000. Okay. What it currently is now, everything is $2,000. If I was to now say to you, okay, we're going to put your price to 10K, would you feel comfortable in the service that you're delivering?
I would definitely increase it. I'm very much that believer of, if I'm going to increase my prices, I need to match that increase in value.
That's what
regardless whether the service is worth it at this moment or not.
Yeah,
it's more, I need to make the difference, because now it's, even if I think I'm giving a 10K service for $2,000, now I need to make.
Yeah, you need to better that again. Yep, absolutely. And that's exactly what it done. And that was from previously me thinking that my service was good. I've always thought, my service is good, what I'm delivering right now, until I've reached the next level. And it's like, God, my service wasn't good. Now, that's not obviously taking anything away from where we are currently, but it's just putting into perspective, like, there are always small improvements, small tweaks that you can make to what you're doing. And that is something that forced me to do that, because I know a lot of trainers, as I say, I know trainers that really undercharge for what they're doing. They produce incredible results. They've got an outstanding service, outstanding customer experience, and they're massively undercharging for it. And that is fair enough if that's what they want to do, and they want to obviously be in that niche. Absolutely fair enough. For me, I am a big advocate on charging what the service is worth, because for that I can then reach more people and I can help more people, and you've got more capital to actually improve your business as well. For example, we now have guest speakers coming on every month from around the world, professionals in their field. We've got live workshops going on. I've got onboarding packages going out with gifting. I've got all sorts going on now. And that's come through increasing the value of the service. So for my personal niche, I work with obviously individuals in the business space, people that are doing very, very well, people that want to pay for everything to be covered.
Yeah.
So that is where I sit. So that's obviously what I try and provide. And I think the point that I'm making is when you push your prices up, it forces you to reevaluate what you're doing. So I remember because I went from a certain amount to to 4 times that. And in one, like after one phone call with that mentor, and I was like, shit. Okay, I had confidence in what I was doing, but straight away I was like, no, I need to do more for what I'm charging now. There needs to be more, which obviously pushed the business forward, which is great.
So, like going into sort of like now, some of the more surface layer business stuff, and I think this is good to thought maybe if we break this down to sort of like sections of that client experience, and we've talked a lot about client retention, sort of things like that, but we can go back over it again. But what are the biggest mistakes you'd see starting off with lead generation, starting off with getting eyes on the business, getting people in the door? What are the biggest mistakes you tend to see happen with coaches?
Not putting yourself out there enough straight away. Not putting yourself out there enough, whether that be on content, whether that be you're hiding behind Canva images, whether that be you are scared to talk in front of camera more often, whether that be that you don't want to do Instagram lives like myself, whether that be that you just not putting yourself out there, not reaching out to people that you know that might have been previous clients, not reaching out to old clients. Hey man, how are you getting on? How's everything going? Like I've had multiple people come back and like I've gone back to previous coaches and whatnot through speaking to them and be like, no, do you know what? I actually really enjoyed working with you previously. So I'm going to go back. Like people don't do that sort of stuff, but like, okay, keeping it back to sort of more specifically on the question, just not putting yourself out there enough. Like you've got to just put yourself out there. As I said, when you're looking at people that are ahead of you, look at the content that they're putting out because you will be watching it, won't you? Do you watch people's content that you obviously look up to?
Of course.
And what sort of content do you look at?
In terms of what kind of things?
I'll answer it because I do it all the time. So I've got like mentors that I keep eyes on, like hot shit, right? And I'm watching their video content constantly.
Yeah,
I will be reading their captions, but people have got a huge hang up about doing videos, about doing either IGTVs, Instagram Reels, talking on stories, IG Lives, Q&As, 5-day challenges. That stuff builds trust and it gets people to understand you as a coach. And also you build a relationship with that person because you're actively talking to them more and more. Like people that I look up to, as I say, I'm consuming all of their content. I'm consuming all of their video content, primarily. I'll be sitting at lunch and I'll be watching one of their videos about whatever they're talking on that day. If they come up, popping up on a live, I'll be on it. And as I say, you feel like you're getting to know that person. So then you personally will then be more likely to want to work with them. Whereas if it is always behind, or if you're not putting enough content out at all, then they're not going to get an opportunity to see your stuff. So you're actually doing them and yourself a disservice because not only are you not building your business, so you're actually going to be left unhappy because you're not gaining obviously the amount of clients that you want to get, you're not producing the amount of results that you want to get, you're not obviously building the business that you want, but also you know that you could potentially help that person. So if you're putting a lot of content into their face and making sure that they're seeing it and being educated by it, and then for them to then reach out to you and become a client, no matter what you're charging or whatnot, because people feel almost guilty for charging for their service, you're going to help that person achieve the result, feel better, look better, feel more confident, and so on. So yeah, number one pitfall there for sure is just in terms of like lead generation is not putting yourself out there enough, not talking on stories enough, and just being a personality, talking about client problems, talking about things that you've experienced previously, mistakes that you've made, putting question boxes out to help these people and just delivering value through content.
Yeah, I think there's you mentioned about people feeling guilty about pricing the service out there and feeling like, a lot of coaches come in, they want to say they want to help as many people as possible. And this is a lesson that stuck with me that I actually learned from Jordan Shallow. And he was like, the best way I've been able to help more people is by pricing myself higher than most people can afford. And the reason why he was explaining, it makes total sense to me, is that the people that can't afford your service, that may need help, won't be able to afford it, whether it's £2,000 or £5,000. Where if I can have my service priced at a higher level, the people that really need it and can afford it will buy it. I can then give a better service to those people. I won't need to take on quite as many people to make the same amount of income, which means I can spend more time helping people for free who generally can't afford my service, rather than still not getting those people to purchase from you anyway.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, and that resonated with me so much, and in terms of So when it comes to the content, especially in the world now where, like Simon Mitchell has made Canva the cool thing. And I think it really is him with coaches. And his Canvas are really good. And I'm not to shame anyone. His business is doing very, very well by all stretches of, the very few times I've spoken to him. But I look at these Canva pages and they're all beautiful. And I go, if I didn't know what your face looked like, I would struggle to find a picture of you. And it looks like a fake account. So where do you feel this balance is? Obviously, Instagram is a visual platform. If we're looking at primarily Instagram here for the moment, Instagram is a very visual platform. And people often get hung up of, I don't put content on there because it can't be that good. It's not perfect. Now, in an ideal world, eventually the aim is to get high quality content regularly. But starting out, should there be more focus on just getting lots of content out there and finding your way through it and improving as you go? Or spending a little more time learning how to make content that actually is good?
I think a mixture of that, actually. Again, I'm going to give a rubbish answer, but I do think a mixture of that counts, because I'm always going to refer back to the people that I keep my eyes on, that are ahead of the game, no matter what space that is in. They put out a whole mixture of stuff. Sometimes that I'm not knocking. I've said Canva a lot on here, but I'm not knocking it at all. Like, it has its place. Like, they can be very informational, and I've read them. I'll read them if guys that I follow put them up and whatnot. But I do think that you just need to have a mixture. Like, I also recently, literally today, eating my lunch, was watching a video from a mentor that I admire, literally on a selfie stick, on a selfie phone, walking down the street. You would argue that isn't quality content, but it was what he was saying. It was the video. So that, to me, was high quality, and it was just natural. So I think with regards to actually what you're putting out there, I think just having clarity on what to do. For example, Monday is going to be a photo with a write-up. Tuesday is going to be some social proof. Wednesday is going to be an IGTV. Thursday is going to be a carousel of Canva carousel, or like Twitter, like obviously the screenshots that people do. Friday, something personal. Saturday, recipe. Sunday, workout. That's now a full week's worth of content, a complete mixture of what you're doing. You can have, obviously you've got photo there, you've got screenshot, like reading text screenshot, you've got a video in there, you've got a workout, you've got a recipe. Like there's I don't think it's particularly a good idea to just focus on one thing when your audience, the consumption of what they're having can be in multiple formats, and is actually more beneficial in multiple formats, because I won't be able to explain a point on a photo like I can in an IGTV.
Yeah.
But then it's also nice to have the photo content there, so that people that prefer to read photo content can read that when they're commuting. People that like to flip through a carousel can do that when it's there. People that like to save a workout, it's there. Like, you've got all of these different like formats that you're putting it out in, I think is important. But actually, I think the main thing that people struggle with there is actually having that clarity and structure of how it's going out, opposed to what specific. Do you know what I mean? Am I making sense?
Totally. Yeah. So you sort of like get a bit of inspiration on the day, and you'll post whatever comes to mind. And and a lot of these things become rushed, rather than, like, you say Wednesday is content creation day. There's probably a lot of thought that then goes into your creation. And like, I always think with those things that, having the variety is important, because if I put up a photo of me with my abs, or I put up a client result to a degree, although that is different because that's social proof. But if I put up a picture of me and my abs, or I put up a quote from somebody else that goes up, that tends to get a lot of likes. Now, that might not necessarily sell the service, although me being in shape obviously is important. But that gets people's eyes on the page. But it's not the things that sells them. The videos, maybe the carousels, if the information's good, is what keeps them on your page and eventually transitions you in terms of selling things, selling from there. I love breaking down content, and some things like how certain things, and not to call out this, because I do it and I think it should do it, and you definitely do it, and I think it's actually good. But if you just pull back a layer, it doesn't make sense. But it shows how Instagram works. And I find it so fascinating how Instagram works. Is that the professional candid photo shoot now is becoming the new carousel. And I have seen more and more ones that are just like, what the fuck am I looking at? Like I saw one, and it's good. Someone pulling up their socks and tying the shoelaces. I saw a behind the scenes shot of you looking into a puddle, and I'm like, I want to know the caption.
Yeah, I don't know what caption's going to go with that yet.
But it shows that it's like how much Instagram is a visual platform. Like it doesn't necessarily need to make sense to get eyes on it. It just needs to stop the scroll.
Yeah, so something like that. I think. The point of obviously getting that sort of content is to people think that they need to match the caption with the photo, and that is not the case at all. You just need a nice photo, and then obviously you can then put whatever point you wanted to make in the caption, and that's where obviously you can drive the value from. Okay, you can link it if you wanted to do obviously with a social proof photo, that's going to be with talking about their story, but if it's a certain point that you wanted to talk about lifestyle or mindset or even nutrition or training, just a nice photo, because as you say, Instagram is graphic and it is a visual platform. So I've said beforehand, in terms of like business development, I keep eyes on business mentors, what they're doing, what educational stuff are they putting out, what are they telling us obviously to do to build the business. But then I also have a very bird's eye view on influencers and how they're posting. All of their stuff is absolutely prestige. And I'm not saying that all of your stuff needs to be, but there's a reason why they've got hundreds of thousands of followers, which helps a lot.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to grow obviously a business and you're trying to do it down, not the influencer route, but you're thinking, yeah, like I provide really, really good results. I provide a great service, very, very educational. That's fantastic. Now think of the leverage that you can get if you've got over 100,000 followers, if you've got 1 million, if you've got thousands of followers. So that's why I like to keep my eyes on both aspects of those people. I follow quite a few fitness influencers, good ones that I actually respect. There's plenty that I don't, but and see, as I say, how they're posting, what are they posting, what sort of photos, what's the quality like? Like that is the depth that I'm looking at, because there's a reason, as I said, that they get the engagement that they get the amount of followers that they get, because then if you compare that with genuinely a good service and good information, you will be laughing.
Yeah. I also think as well, like if you're going specifically on the personal trainer route somehow, like getting a link with a good photographer, not just for your content, it could be in a different country, but for clients in those countries is game changing. I only look at, do you know Leanne Marshall? Who used to work at Mayfair?
No.
So she's doing really well. She hardly ever posts on Instagram, but when she does, she's got herself into this niche of the acting world. So she's got a lot of very committed clients, and she's got some really, really solid results. But she works very heavily. I don't know if for the first few she was paying for them herself. I don't know if she still does. She probably does because she's got the business, she can do it. But paying for Simon Howard to do every single after photo. And now I stop when her photos come up, and like the result is really good, but like it's 10x'd by the quality of the photo. And in a feed that I might have 10 or 12 coaches doing,
yeah, 100%.
It's an absolute like game changer to be able to have that quality of photo.
Completely agree with that. It's something that me and a few of the other like obviously trainers that I'm regularly in contact with speak about, because the quality that you can get obviously from that photo will, as you say, 10x the look of the result, and it just makes it more professional. It just makes your service look better, more appealing. Like rather than some of the photos and after photos that I've had previously of people in their bedroom with their knickers in the background, or they've got knickers on, don't get me wrong, but or like just or someone's
is this for your OnlyFans account, Alex?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I let that one slip, didn't I?
I'll put the link in the description below.
Or like they've got just their messy bedroom in the background or something like that, opposed to like a clear before photo and then an actual photo shoot quality photo as an after photo. Like how that actually looks as you're looking at is incredible. Like the difference makes such a difference. So I don't personally see it as an expense, either if I pay for the photo shoot or alternatively if the client wants to, because quite often if you put the idea out, they will actually want to be like, do you know what? I think you'll actually smash a photo shoot. Do you want to do it? Like I've had a few people that have recently done that. So, and they've loved it. And as I say, that will really, really help because we know that the gold standard for, in terms of obviously growing a transformation business is to provide transformations. So if you could then bring up the quality of the after photos that you're using, that will bring a lot of value for you and your business in terms of obviously client generation and people obviously wanting to work with you because it just looks more professional.
Yeah.
So and that goes across, I think, that goes across, I think, everything. In terms of obviously getting professional photos, what we said about content and things like that, it's not essential all the time, but just make your stuff look good. Just make it look nice. Like be in a nice background when you're doing your photos. Personally, I think little things like that do make a really big difference.
I totally
people want to watch it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's something that, like, as I'm now finally getting my act together and starting getting leaner, like once I I don't have to be mega lean because a lot of these I'm not going to be having this off, but I just want to be, like now as 3-4 weeks time when I'm, getting pretty lean, I'm going to book so many photo shoots and most of them aren't with my shirt off. It's just me with an actual jawline and arms that look okay. And like, I'm in Hong Kong. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Like, how do I not have more photos of good photos of me here?
Yeah. Yeah, something that again, that a lot of trainers struggle with, and I certainly have as well, but I'm getting better. It's just asking whoever you're with, just take photos of you. And 9 times out of 10, they'll be crap, personally for myself. But you will catch the one that's like, oh, yes, okay, that's a good one. That's going to go up well on that will look good on Instagram. And you do, it's very, very shallow, but you do have to look, it's very, very vain, but you do have to look at that sort of stuff. Like, as I said, you need your Instagram to look good. If we are, obviously, we're very heavily on Instagram. Obviously, you've got Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the others, TikTok and whatnot, which people are on now. But the same concept goes. Like, you need to have good quality stuff, good quality video going out, good quality photos going up, because then it just pairs better with the caption. No matter if the main point is actually in the caption, but you're going to put a shitty photo with it, no one's going to read it because they're just going to scroll past it.
Yeah. So like moving on to the next step now, we've now sorted people's content creation out. They're now getting people into the business. What's the biggest mistakes you see people make actually in sales?
Again, good question. In sales, they don't value their own service enough, or they don't have confidence in what they are actually delivering, thinking that they need to be 1,000 steps ahead and the most educated person in the world. And that's not the case. You just need to be one step ahead of your client. And generally, that is where people are at. And 9 times out of 10, when people start off, for example, I'm going to use somebody that I know that has come from a corporate background and then started out in online training because she was really into her fitness and didn't have much confidence in it. I said, yeah, but do you know more than the most of the corporates in your office? And she was like, yeah, tenfold. And I was like, okay, that's fine then. What are you worried about? Speak about that in very, very simple terms, because that's how it's going to get. That's how it's going to get ingested. But sorry, I'm going back into the content. Sales. I think having confidence on a call, and a saying that I live by is say it with your chest. So the service is what it is. Okay. So you build obviously the rapport with people, you speak to people on sales calls and whatnot, and you have a little bit of back and forth with them. You speak about their goals, you speak about their struggles, how you could potentially navigate around that a little bit. An overview of what the service entails, but don't bore them. That does not matter. What matters is that you're going to achieve that result. So if that client on the end of the phone feels like you are the guy that can definitely improve that result, it doesn't matter the intricacies of your service. I do still go over a brief overview of them though. And then I do not hesitate on where my price is at. It is what it is because of the value that I provide. And I say that like exactly like that, with that clarity, with that confidence. And I remember when starting, I was very, very hesitant on the actual pitch at the end. That brief 30 seconds to a minute of now we're saying the price, or you're then, as soon as you say it, you then say, because you've got this included, because of that, because of this, and all of that. And then you can almost also like talk your way out of it. Whereas if you just, it is what it is. This is the price. Yeah. Which is it going to be?
I think for me, looking at sales calls, like there's three things I point out. I think are big red flags, and then one of them is sort of linked to that, and this is one that I've personally done. It's like in that close is being able to talk yourself out of a sale because you just almost want to overprove, and like I'm chatty by nature, hence why I started a podcast rather than a book. So it's. For me, it's sort of like, okay, having that confidence, say the price, and then just go back off them. And that's something I've learned. And that's something I've got tons better at. And I've got a pretty good batting average now. But that wasn't always the case. And I think that's why I struggle. But I think the thing that I find that sets a lot of people back is two things. It's one, being like, it sounds counterintuitive, but this is where some of the bad business mentors have fucked people in the pushiness of sales. Nothing puts me off. If I've generally can't afford a service and it's a good sales call, I'll go off the sales call going, in the future, I will save up and I will buy on them. Right? Yeah. Well, I'm working with Adam Haley now, right? First time I wasn't in a position to do it. It was just cool, no worries, get back in touch if you need to.
Yeah.
When I was ready, I went for it. But there's nothing that puts me off ever using a service ever again going, yeah, well, if you get off this call now, I've only got like 3 spaces left. And I just can't guarantee that you'll have a space left when you come into it, and just pushing you. And like, I've been on those sales calls and I felt so uncomfortable of being forced into something. It's like, like you're being forced to, it's like going forced to break the law where your mate goes, go on, rob that shop. And you don't want to do it. Like that feeling. Or in a sales call, feeling I need to buy them. I don't want to ever speak to you again, let alone buy from you.
For sure.
And I think the other thing I notice is people not actually, and it links into the same thing of people going into a sales call with the only focus is coming out of it with someone's bank details, rather than going, can I actually create a solution for somebody on this call? Like the big thing I do now is like find out where they're at, overview the call, tell them I'm going to, if you want to get involved, I'm going to sell you into this. But the aim in between is, let's create a strategy so that if you're not ready to invest, you should leave this call better than when you went onto it. And I always outline that. And then I generally go, right, I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to help you. And I think since I've started putting my ego aside, I've had a much better batting average on sales calls.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, generally, obviously, as I go into sales calls, I'll give an overview of the goal of like, obviously me getting clear on what exactly they want to achieve, the struggles that they might come up against. Obviously, we would have already spoken about this previously, but I'd just like to go into a little bit further, and I'll say that to them. This is when I'm saying, obviously, the overview of how we'll run the call, and then overview of obviously the struggles that they have previously had and how we can try and navigate around those, some of the potential things that could help. So again, they're getting a good bit of value there. Okay, have you tried this? Have you tried that? This is what I think will help with that. And then I will, of course, go into the rest of it and obviously give them the options towards the end.
Yeah. So like we've now kind of gone into a little bit of sales, and then just like finishing off there in terms of, let's say like client retention, client referrals, because they sort of come into that same sort of pocket. What's the biggest things you see there where people, like business owners in general, you don't have to be fitness, let themselves down in terms of keeping their current clients or getting their clients to recommend other people to?
Focusing on the front end a little bit too much in terms of lead generation and not client retention and not client fulfillment, because obviously your retention will go up and your referrals will go up if you deliver an outstanding service. Whereas if all of your focus is on the front end and getting people through the door, which it rightfully does need to be, but also just be very mindful, unless you want to take on a coach, because then obviously that's massively going to help in terms of obviously the client delivery, making sure that you are delivering a very, very good service for your client. Okay. I think people overcomplicate, and I've been caught up in this, in what you need to actually provide for your clients. So for example, what I mean by that is I've got multiple resources, multiple videos, built out members area and so on in my service now. I don't think a very high percentage of my clients actually watch it. I think the main valuable points is that am I in regular communication with them? So they'll receive their check-ins at the front of the week. I'll regularly have calls with them every, 2 or 3 times per month, probably, depending on sort of like how they're feeling or how I'm feeling, if I just want to have a catch up with them and so on. And then touch points throughout the week, making sure that they're all good little messages here and there, because they know that they're being looked after. And any question that they've got is instantly getting answered with a good solution around that problem. That is how they will then also talk about the service, and then also over delivering. So for example, something that I've started pulling into mind is actually client gifting. So it's very, very little things as well. Like, it doesn't have to be expensive at all. Like, it's sending out books. Like, I work with a lot of guys that are also on computers until late. So I now send out blue light blocking glasses to them. Don't tell them. I just send them. And then when they receive it, they're over the moon. They're like, oh my gosh, this was such a nice surprise. I didn't think that this was there. I didn't know this was going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And they really appreciate that stuff. So then something that really stuck with me, it came from another mentor, was that think about when you go into like a nice restaurant or into a nice hotel, like a really nice hotel or a really nice restaurant, although it's expensive, like the service that you get, like the communication, the little add-ons, the over and above things that you get from these people. You're going to talk about that to your friends. Like I do. If I've been to an Unreal hotel or an Unreal restaurant, I'll be like, oh my gosh, like you need to check out this place because it is so nice. Like it gets people talking. If you deliver a mediocre service or not great service, nobody goes and tells their friends that they've just had a McDonald's and oh my gosh, the service was incredible. Like these chips were just absolutely amazing. Like that doesn't happen, does it? So I think it really does go off the value that you can provide. And that comes from, as I say, the delivery of how you're actually treating that client, the over and above, the extra little messages here and there. How's your weekend going? Ask it. So I've got in notes, I note down little things that they might have said to me, either about their family as, oh, his son's got his test coming up next week. Ask them that week. Like I keep that in little notes, like just to the side. It doesn't get overwhelming. But just little things like that, I think really, really help, because then that also then obviously gets them talking about it to their friends, because you are going over and above and delivering a good service for them. That, and also going back to the results, if they're getting good results and if they're loving it and they're loving how they're feeling, how they're looking and so on, that will always be the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest thing that will drive referrals, retention and so on.
Yeah, I think, I totally agree with that. I think, to add on to there with referrals, one of the biggest things that trainers don't do is ever ask for them.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I definitely should have mentioned that. Yeah. I definitely should have mentioned that, actually asking for them.
Yeah. But like the interesting thing about there is looking at the communication. And it's something that, like, if you put even aside the service element, if we look at the results, have you had an outstanding result ever where someone has had just as their check-in and then he stays silent for a week, and then you do the check-in and then he stays silent for a week? Is that ever led to a phenomenal result? If it is, it's probably a rarity, right?
I was going to say, I feel like you're hunting for a certain the correct answer here. No, it hasn't. Yeah. I have, obviously there are differences in different clients. Obviously, you do get the type of client that do follow along, and they will literally just follow along until the end. And then, of course, no, generally that will come through an aspect of delivering webinars throughout the week, little touch points, making sure that they're all good.
Yeah, sure. I always think like if I look at the trends, I always go, right, if I want to be a results producing trainer, what are the trends of the clients I've had that have done very, very well? And how can I implement things into my business to encourage more people who maybe not that way inclined to be more that way inclined? And like, I'll use an example like Mika, but I can use an example of any phenomenal result that I've ever had. Nearly always, they're very, very, very good at keeping communication. You never have to remember to do a touch point with them, because asking questions, they're sending you voice notes, they're adding things to the Facebook group, they're chatting away with you. You become friendly. And so it's like, so one of the big things that I tend to do, and I'm about to talk to Paul at ATO Solutions now. My website's finally done, and getting my automations. And one thing I'm very heavily adding there is like, once the program's gone out, 24 hours later, the first area in my member section is the first 21 days. And it's like every day I want you to send me some food pictures, send me some screenshots, because it just encourages, no, the communication isn't just once a week. There'll be a formal once a week.
Absolutely.
And let's get that in, because I know from and that it kills two birds with one stone. It gets them out of their shy, I don't want to ask questions stage, because they don't have to ask questions. They just send photos and I ask the question.
Sure.
But two, from someone who some people are really good touch point wise without thinking about it. Some trainers are like, they'll be up to 2 o'clock in the morning, meshing the clients at all time zones, and not whether that's good or not, it's up to you, but I like go, like we talked about like procrastination earlier on, my brain will go off on different tangents, and I can quite easily, without prompting, go, I should have messaged that person today. So like having that as a structured part of my business now ensures that I give the service that I know I need to, and ensures the client meets me halfway.
Yeah. 100%. I completely agree with all of that for sure. As I say, like I know for myself personally, I always ask questions, and I know that that's fared me very, very well moving forwards, obviously with yourself and so on. And I know for a fact that, some people can be very, very shy in doing that. So as you say, making sure that it is not a safe place. That's a poor way of putting it, but maybe for lack of better explanation, a comfortable place for them to know that no question is a stupid question. That's something that's always stuck with me. As you know, I think I mentioned it on the previous webinar.
And the previous podcast we did as well.
Previous podcast, yeah. And and so as long as your clients know that, because as you say, if they don't understand something, then they're going to struggle with it. So if they get the green light to actually ask questions when they feel necessary and quickly as well, you can put out that fire.
Yeah. And bringing it full circle. I mean, like you talk about you remembering those little pain points, you remember the things that he said to you, encouraging those questions. Like I know, for sake of argument, I always use the example of a client, Winston, that I had, 18 months or so ago, who never took photos himself. You look at his Instagram, it's just a picture of his wife. I was like, Winston, like if anyone goes to your Instagram, they're going to say, she's got a weird name. And he eventually I hate taking photos of himself. And then eventually started taking selfies in the change rooms and sending them to me. And I was like, okay, we're onto something here. And eventually we convinced him to do a photo shoot. And I was like, just before the photo shoot happened, all the gyms closed. I'm like, what do I do? And then we did one out in the harbor in Hong Kong. And so I looking back at that, and I was like, if I wanted to create content about that, unfortunately, there's not much I can create. But if I wanted to create content about that, there's so many things that I can now pull from to create that little bit of an emotional hook. And it comes full circle because I paid attention to the client. I've learned more about the client and their struggles, which feeds back into the lead generation, feeds back into the things you can talk about your sales calls, and it just becomes a bit of a circle. Yeah. And it all comes back to the start.
Business is always, I found that it's always that constant reevaluation. There's an actual word for that, and I cannot remember. There's an actual word in business called that, where you constantly reevaluate everything. You just go in this circle of, okay, we've assessed the situation. What's the solution? Okay, let's put that together. Okay, how does that run with the client? Okay, cool, that's working. That's brought out a good result. Perfect. Now we're back to a problem, and then you are reevaluating always. So obviously, I will do that. I'll go through the service from a client's perspective. I'll go through my links. I'll go through everything. How does it all look? Like, is it all very, very smooth? Is it easy? Is it easy to complete? Does it look good? And then that could be client fulfillment. That could be the actual onboarding process. That could be the offboarding process. That could be the training delivery. That could be the check-in delivery, the communication on my side, the education every month, and so on. Like, I will evaluate, okay, is this as effective and as good as it can be? Have I over-delivered here? Is this where the standard that I want it to be? And by the time you've come back around, so once you've done your onboarding, okay, perfect. Now let's move on to the next thing. By the time you've come back around, you'll probably make some adjustments again, because you'll be like, I don't like that anymore. Yeah. Well, that could be a bit better. And by keep on doing that, you'll keep on developing the business. And as I say, always returning it back to the client and thinking, what is this person struggling with? So obviously, initially, when I first started, it was just training and nutrition. That was it. There's no like education or anything like that. And then through sort of like different client problems that have come up, like, for example, I'll give some really easy examples. Some clients struggle to get their steps in. Okay, cool. That's a struggle. What's the solution? Put a guide together of how you can get your steps in if you're really busy. Great. Answer. There you go. Next one, how to increase your protein intake. Cool. Let's do a guide around that. And just keep on doing that. And eventually, any question that gets asked, you'll have something on it.
Yeah. Like I do that very much, not just the pain points, but also like the wins. Like sometimes I go, wow, that worked really well in my business. Now, how do I make sure that is included every single time I work with a client? And like one big thing I went recently, I was looking over my members area and adding some more things to it and going through more and more stuff. And I started going, right, how many people are using the members area? And I go, and you said earlier on, well, I'm not sure enough people watch it. But then I'll start getting questions and I'm like, go and watch the members area, go and watch the members area. And one of the things I have in my members area, which is a bit of me looking at what precision nutrition kind of do, but taking my spin on it. It's like having a bit of a syllabus, like over a decade of experience, what things do people tend to feel, mess up on, struggle with at what time? So now I've like put it together, like my thing. I was like, I've got like an induction area, I've got lifestyle solutions, like the steps stuff and things like that. And then it'd be like, right, at week 1, this is the key habit you need. Week 2, it's going to be this. And I've now added that into the bottom of all my check-ins. So basically I've got, check-in templates from 0 to, at the moment 24, which, all the actual content, the check-in will change, but there'll be a link. So then there's like, rather than the client having to remember, maybe we should check the members area this week, or, where's that link again? I'm just like, I link them directly to the thing. And then we can talk about that and go through that, and I can change the link if necessary. And that just means a much bigger success rate since I started doing that, of people actually going through them. In turn, they've ended up sticking to the training more because they're actually doing the diary management stuff, they're playing around with it. Yeah. Whereas before, it was just content, if they have time, they'll check it out.
Yeah. Something that I wish changing it a little bit, but just to obviously help people out and whatnot, is something I wish I did start doing earlier, was taking on team members and taking on people to help in different aspects. So whether that be, I used to have a client success coach, no longer have those because they've actually taken on a full-time PA. So to sort out sort of a lot of
admin. You say client success coach, what do you mean by that?
What he done was basically go through everything. So I would deliver like obviously all of the check-ins at the start of the week. And then I would just have him regularly just keeping eyes on programs, making sure metrics are being filled out. If there's any sort of like messages that have slipped through the gap, then he'll let me know. And keeping eyes on programs, keeping eyes on progress, and just having a second pair of eyes. To be honest, it's just a second pair of eyes. He's doing what I'm doing, but just with me. So that when I'm obviously producing content, and when I'm looking at admin, and when I'm looking at business development, and when I'm studying, he can then obviously keep eyes on Simon's metrics and be like, Simon, make sure you fill out your metrics for today. And so on. Obviously, I keep eyes on the programs a lot throughout the week, but as you obviously client numbers start building, that does start getting more difficult. So having a second pair of eyes on that with you just allows for not so many people to sort of like fall through the cracks and so on. So like, as I say, with like obviously expanding on the team and just having people, so whether that be in areas that you struggle with. So if you struggle creating content or taking photos, get someone to help you with that. Whether that be an actual photographer to take good photos of you, or getting somebody on that that you can just go around the town with and take some photos. Or alternatively, like my next shift is actually going to be taking on a coach to handle the coaching side of things, so that I can then train them up to be an outstanding coach as well. And then obviously that alleviates a lot of my time to then again focus on business development, because things will stop moving as quickly as you want them to if you're doing everything in the business still. Massively.
I'm obviously earlier stage than you, but I'm sort of getting to that point now. So it's similar things like, well, I've got someone to do my website. I was trying to do it on Squarespace for ages, and I realized I'm procrastinating on it. It's going to look rubbish no matter what I do. I'm going to invest in somebody to do it. Now, is that a bigger investment than I'd like to make at this stage? Yes, but I know that it's going to be there and done. And I don't have to worry about that again. I can make that money back. And the same 100%. Thing, paying Paul from ATO Solutions to do my automations, that means like I'm at that stage of clients now where it's not unmanageable, but I now have to double take when I'm doing my check-in reminders going, have I got everybody? Have I missed anyone out? And it hasn't happened yet, but there will be a point. And there's a couple of times I've gone immediately gone, I've missed that person, need to go back and do it. And like minimizing those things and him making the emails look pretty. And I get a few things with onboarding recently where as more and more people go through it, I'll get people that'll go, skim read stuff, or links aren't obvious because it's just written in a Gmail. I'm like, right, if I can get someone on Active Campaign to do this for me, I can have it's like form, fill, button, click. It's unmissable.
Yeah.
And like that's the first stage of me doing that same thing. And I realized like it's just a game changer. Like I'd rather pay someone to do it of quality, even if it costs more than I'd like to pay. I'd never want to do it on the cheap, because once it's done, and my business can flow.
Absolutely. I think some people can sort of like get stuck into it themselves. I don't think they can if they're still heavily in the business themselves. If they've got other coaches, I know that they will take on sort of like different admin roles, trying to suss out different automation stuff themselves. But yeah, for sure, I'm exactly the same thing. I would just delegate stuff that I don't understand because I will procrastinate on it and I'll do a rubbish job. So similarly to yourself, like I had somebody build out my members area, build out my website for me. Any of the videos that I record that need to be uploaded to that, I'll just send it over to them. Like I've got an IT guy with me like full time. So whenever I need anything to do with that, whether it be on the payment processor, anything to do with like creating new packages, automations for that, email automate, that all goes off to him straight away. And other things like obviously I'm currently looking at sort of like outsourcing somebody to make my sort of like Instagram graphics look better. So not just like the photos, but like the actual videos that are going out, or like even the Canva images, you can outsource that. Like you don't have to be doing that stuff. Or alternatively, you can get a copywriter and you can obviously get them to understand your demographic and get them to start writing up your copy if you don't feel confident in that.
Yeah.
So because it's just going to take you ages to do it otherwise. And if it's somebody that's actually going to hold the business back, you'd be better off paying somebody else because the return will be far higher than what you're paying.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to sort of like start to sort of wrap up, you've gone through so many tips now. Is there anything that you feel that we've potentially missed in terms of things that are big red flags that have like that slip up businesses in their early stages?
I think the main issues that I see with sort of obviously like new trainers and that I experienced massively myself was not putting out enough content initially and speaking and just being confident in sort of like who you are on the camera and actually speaking to that, because people buy into trust, of course. So, and understanding that you need to get your face out there and you need to get eyes on your page. That is definitely like a big one of it. Constantly developing the service and living and breathing what you're actually doing as well. So always reiterating the things that you're doing, always reiterating and assessing the problems that your clients are having, and then obviously addressing those. Educating yourself, continuous education is a big one actually that a lot of trainers stop doing when they start running their own things and running their own businesses massively, and then they lose confidence in themselves as a coach. That comes from a lack of continued education. And then sort of like a little bit more business stuff, I would say not taking on team members soon enough. Taking on teams. I've learned from that one for sure to help you with obviously the growth of everything. Fall forwards fast. On the back of that, fall forwards fast. So if you get overwhelmed, get to a point of aim to get to a point of overwhelm and then address the problem when it comes, whether that be taking on a team member to help or whatnot. Don't slow things down because things are going well. I've learned that one the hard way. So yeah, that and yeah, I would say that is it. And work on the offer and know who you're talking to. So if you are obviously crystal clear clarity on exactly who you're talking to, and then have an offer statement that is actually appealing to them and actually hits them nail on the head with their struggle and what they want to achieve. Yeah, because just a quick one for somebody to recommend as a look at all of his stuff is Alex Hormozy. Absolutely unbelievable, genius guy in what he does. Talks all about like offers, business, all things to do with business, to be honest, and how you pitch it, how you offer it, and the service that's built out. And it's definitely been a huge help with how I speak, because that's very, very important. It doesn't matter how good you are as a coach. If you don't know how to articulate that and how to actually draw people in to the good service that you've got, then you'll struggle and things will be slow.
Yeah. Okay. That's been really, really good. I think there's so much stuff that we can sort of go through into here. But for anyone who wants to go and follow your work, whether they've just been inspired by the last episode and forgotten your name and wants to go in for coaching, or whether it's somebody who wants just to keep an eye on what you're doing, learn a little bit about their business and some things like that, how do people find you again, Alex?
Yep. So I'm mainly on Instagram. So just Alex Searle Fitness on Instagram. I do have a website, but I'm obviously way more active, of course, on Instagram. So there's a lot more stuff going out on that. I think just a really, really quick one. Sorry, just to add, that's actually sprung to mind before we wrap up there is that, and we definitely should have brought this up earlier in the podcast, is your environment matters massively when you're an entrepreneur. Like I know or like a business owner, I know how unproductive I can be when I'm at home where I am currently now, compared to if I'm living in a different country, or if I have my own space, or if I am going out every weekend and stuff like that. Like that really does also hold people back when they're just playing a lot. If they want to obviously they need to be pushing business hard. If you want to be successful and you want it to grow to a level of which you're aiming it to be, you do need to concentrate on that and actually understand that your environment really, really does matter. So if you're always going to be playing around on stories, going out for a drink and having a laugh and whatnot, and then just being at home or procrastinating around the environment that you're in, that will be holding you back massively.
Yeah. I think that's really, really important. I know from my experience that there have been times where I've pushed myself forward, my environment's been good, and there are times where I've been totally miserable in my environment and nothing else happens. And I think that's a game changer. For me, I know that sometimes just getting out and going to a new coffee shop in a brand new environment just gets you out of a rut. Going to the same places every day ruins it. And if you're working from online, like taking yourself away and doing a mini staycation on your own. Going off when I first started the business, one of the biggest breakthrough days I had was a little island here called Lama, which is so much fun. And I just went to a bar on Lama by the beach, and I was completely secluded, and I sat there for a day, and I had no work, no clients anymore. So I was like, okay, I'm starting something new, and that was such an important thing. And if I'd stayed at home, I don't think I would have been as productive.
Yeah. That and like the people that you're with as well. So network with other trainers, speak to them, because I've gained far more knowledge and further education on what to do business-wise through speaking to trainers that are ahead of me and that are a couple of years ahead of me and whatnot, because you have different conversations with trainers that are ahead, and then that brings you new ideas, and then that gives you obviously the idea of where to go forwards. But thank you so much for having me on secondly as well. I hope obviously it's been a good one and of value to people. I feel like I've rambled.
Absolutely awesome. Now, ramble's good. We like long form entertainment. Thank you again, Alex. I'll speak to you soon.
See you, mate.